JT and I were at an event together in New York. After said event, we went out with some of the participants. Some drinks were had. We're at a bar in Manhattan, and Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso comes on, and this man proceeds to go nuclear. Like, this my shit, dancing, singing.
Man.
I was like, bro, what? But so as a supportive podcast host, I decided to match his energy and do the exact same thing. So there's two 30-year-old men screaming the words to Espresso in a bar at like 7 p.m. and no one else is vibing like we are. Boy, Big Sean's been going crazy recently, and I just wanted to give Big Sean his flowers on the show, knowing how much he means to you. So
yes, that boy.
Shout out Sean Don. Come on the pod.
Sean Don.
I don't know what we talk about, but he seems cool.
It's poetry, man. That
we talk about poetry, spirituality.
Nobody wants to do that. They want to do it offline, but he'll rock with it. Doesn't matter. So touching. But
not here for you.
Ever since he came out with that, man, unfortunately, it was right after Sabrina Carpenter got me on a chokehold. So I've been repeating.
That's a great reminder. I did want to tell a story on a pod. We JT and I were at an event together in New York. After said event, we went out with some of the participants. Some drinks were had. We're at a bar in Manhattan, and Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso comes on, and this man proceeds to go nuclear. Like, this my shit, dancing, singing. Man. I was like, bro, what? But so as a supportive podcast host, I decided to match his energy and do the exact same thing. So there's two 30-year-old men screaming the words to Espresso in a bar at like 7 p.m. and no one else is vibing like we are.
Yeah, they needed a shot. They needed a special shot. I don't know. It's a banger.
Banger.
People know, man. People on the internet know, but I don't know. Just be you. You'll be right. I know you guys vibing in the car with that. It's all right.
Just let it out. Be yourself. Let it out. Just vibe.
Just vibe. Little Carpenter, little Big Sean. Whatever you got.
Whatever feels right. Oh, damn. All right. Well, let's get into today's topic. We've been BSing enough. So we thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about some sport-specific training. So shout out our boy Jordan Baker Blanc. Talked about it a little bit in his episode. Definitely check that one out if you have not listened yet. But yeah, we can just dive into all things sport-specific training. I thought it would be interesting to see what ChatGPT had to say. I feel like this is like such a niche thing that I didn't know like what was going to come back. I was expecting something not as good as this. Is it pretty good? So ChatGPT said sport-specific training refers to a structured and focused approach to preparing athletes for the specific demands of their chosen sport. This type of training goes beyond general fitness and targets the skills, movements, energy systems, and physiological adaptations required for optimal performance in a particular sport.
Great.
Remember all those times I said ChatGPT can't take our job? I'm pretty sure ChatGPT is going to take our job.
That's a brilliant answer.
Shout out ChatGPT.
Shout out Chad.
Pretty sure. You think that's pretty dead on?
I think so. I mean, if you were to ask 1,000 coaches what sports-specific training would be, it'd be nowhere. I would say nowhere as accurate and politically correct as that answer. Honestly,
yeah.
I think everybody has their own definition of it. So I think this definition like really locks in what it actually is versus what people interpret it to be.
Yeah. So I guess we could start with the interpretation, since that's the fun, kind of funny, sexy stuff. So when you hear sport-specific training, What what negative things come to mind?
Like if you're playing basketball for you know, and you're trying to get better at basketball, a trainer puts a weighted ball to have you shoot or something like that, right? It makes the implement, let's increase load on it. Let's put some resistance on it to get you better at the skill, right? That's if you want to get better at dribbling, I'll give you a heavier ball, right? There's probably credence to that, but it's that thought, like, oh, this is a thing that you do for sport. Let's add load to it. Let's make it look like it, and then you're gonna get better at it. So I think that's like the uh, overarching view of what I've seen in the past of what sports specific training is usually interpreted as. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's something similar, like loading loading the sporting movement, like exactly how it's performed. So like thinking about like we talked about off air before we got on, like putting a cable to a golf club head or a baseball bat or something. We have some external resistance pulling on you while you're doing it, or just like a general obsession with the sporting implement, right? And I spent a ton of time working with youth soccer, throughout my career, and one thing that a lot of youth soccer coaches, especially youth soccer coaches who are not from the States, um, get super obsessive about doing everything with the ball, right? Like everything that be with ball, with ball, with ball, with ball, like everything we do. And I think like I was probably too resistant to it, to the point where like we didn't get a lot of buy-in. So I probably went too far on one end of the sports specific quote unquote spectrum. But like they wanted to do every ESD session had to be with the ball, right? Every movement skill, like sprinting, change of direction session had to be with the ball. Like everything we did had to be with the ball. So in my opinion, it limited the outputs that the athletes were hitting. It limited our ability to make a positive impact on the qualities we're trying to train, whether it was endurance related or speed related. But again, in retrospect, especially with the younger groups, like who cares if they warm up with the ball? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so some things like matter less to a certain extent. So like I I think there's a give and take that you have to have in any environment, especially with like a sport coach who's kind of dictating, your role and what you do. But like they weren't buying into the weight room stuff, and I wasn't buying into the with ball stuff. So that it just became this like
Right.
negative headbutting interaction. I think like, while I don't fully agree with like the sport specificity of doing all your conditioning with the ball, like I think there's a time and a place where you can do something fun, and if that allows you to get buy-in from the coach to spend more time doing the things that you think are going to have a major impact on, whether it's resilience or performance, like stuff in the weight room or sprinting without the ball, like I think sometimes you gotta just take that L and know it's going to lead to a bigger W in the future.
When you say take that L, what do you mean?
Like concede a little bit,
For
right?
an
Give up.
athlete having a ball to get the adaptation you want?
Yeah. So like, fine. We'll use the ball in the warm up and we'll use the ball in conditioning, but we won't use it during our movement skill because I want, high velocities. I want, a focus on the technical components of the move, whatever it might be. And then maybe we sprinkle the ball in when they get proficient and as like a specific stimulus to react to.
Yeah.
I think that would have helped them be like, cool, you're doing good. We can do more weight room stuff if that's what you think is helpful, rather than being like complaining about doing the things that the coach wanted to do and then being like, all right, then whatever, no weight room.
So I know these words, sports specific training, were really used like pretty regularly in the past, maybe 5+ years ago. I don't see it as much now, but I still see it like in coach bios that I see like in commercial gyms, and these are the things that I do. I specialize in sports specific training. But what do you think it started or originated from, to where this is something that is highlighted as a skill of a coach in the industry? Do you think there was a place of like, oh, I'm different that way? I'm different. I do sports specific training.
I think some of it started like, the way you set it up. I think some of it started like as a way to market yourself and differentiate yourself within the market.
Yeah.
Like as social media potentially grew in popularity, or has just strength conditioning and fitness in general has like skyrocketed in popularity over the past 10, 20 years. It's like, all right, how can I niche down and train baseball players?
Yeah.
Right. How can I niche down and train golfers? Well, I'm a golf specific strength and conditioning coach, which I think like can exist. It does exist, but in a different way than like people market it. I think there's kind of disconnecting there between like, how our industry works and like what the general public perceives our industry as. Like, they're like, all right, I got you specifically for golf. I want to see you doing golf stuff. But the training should look like golf stuff. As a member of the general population, general public, I should be able to be like, yep, that's for golf. Rather than like you see a golf or you see some of the stuff that again, going back to Jordan episode with Jordan, they're lifting heavy. They're doing a lot of general stuff. They're doing plyometrics. It's like, well, you don't jump in golf, right? Like, again, like the general public's reaction to that, knowing that like this is sport specific because I'm training a quality that's specific to the sport.
Yeah.
Right. And like being like, I'm gonna like I guess individualized training is probably a better, or just training. It's just training. I think like sport specific training doesn't really exist per se. It's just good training. It's just it's the bare minimum of a performance coach is quote unquote sport specific training in my opinion. So maybe some of it was born out of that. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts like where it popped up from?
I think it's the marketing, right? I could be wrong there. I didn't dive too deep into that, but a lot of it is marketing and communicating to the population that you want to work with, right? And till this day, I think that's where we should still use it or use that terminology for
Yeah.
as a coach, and how we communicate the movements, or how we can help translate the things that we're working on in the weight room. And I know looking at the notes here, we're going to talk about in terms of how we can think of it as coaches, but like when sports specific training, I think is used to people other than coaches, or actually even coaches, but specifically populations you want to work with, it helps differentiate like, oh, I play this sport, this coach will help me get better at soccer because
Mm-hmm.
they do soccer specific training, so I'm going to go with them. But like you said, it's if you have good training, you will get better at soccer without having a soccer specific type of training.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of how we communicate it, and how we can translate the technical aspects of what we're actually looking at, right? And as coaches, and early on with me, I fell into that trap too of like, oh, I only do sports specific training for basketball, and everything I would do is like, I would say it's specific for basketball, where I would now get confused of what I'm actually trying to achieve with my training, and they wouldn't get better at anything. So I'm like, right, I'm doing all this stuff, doing some stuff that looks like it. Have them going on a BOSU ball, like, yo, this will help your balance and dribbling, and they're still trash at dribbling. Like, okay,
it's just like a suitcase carrier dribbling, one arm dumbbell, one arm dribble, just getting after it, like.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting to see how I think our industry has gotten a lot smarter with it, and understanding what it could mean or what it actually means, but go into like how we can start to really put these different lenses on as a coach to achieve sport specific training.
Yeah. I think when we think about training, I think it really exists over three major buckets, right? We can improve the physical. So like, at Exos, we'd say position, pattern, power, but like, what's your mobility, stability, what ranges of motion can you get into? How do you coordinate movement? And then, strength, speed, power, whatever you want to call them, like qualities that we can improve. We can get better at technical stuff. So like the technical aspects of your movement in your game. So like a golf swing, a tennis serve, a crossover in basketball, your jump shot. It's all technical aspects. And then we can get better tactically, which is like the skills of the game, the strategy of the game. There's probably a fourth kind of like mental or sensory cognitive bucket that we could probably fill up. But to be frank, I don't know quite as much about that. So I'll put that bucket off to the side for now.
I think
But I think
proprioception
our
could be a
role,
fourth P,
yeah, right. Like
maybe.
throw that in there in the kind of mix. But I think our role is primarily filling the physical bucket. Like when you look at a staff, a team, like they're coming to you to get the physical bucket filled. So that looks like assessing and improving, relevant ranges of motion based on the demands of the sport. It looks like making them better movers. It looks like getting them stronger and bigger and faster, or stronger and leaner and faster, more explosive, but better at interacting with the ground in some way, whether it's being able to, better manage eccentric forces or have a better reactive strength. You're bouncier off the ground, right? Whatever it might be. Like that's kind of where we live. That's kind of the primary bucket that we fill. And I think like the sport specific aspect of it just comes from you as a coach having an understanding of the task. And like for me, it's no different than if I'm working with someone who wants to lose 20 pounds. There's a regular person, accountant, whatever. Or if I'm working with a youth athlete, if I'm working with a pro athlete, it's like, all right, what do you want to get better at? What is your thing? What does that require of you? What do you have right now? How do we bridge the gap? Like it's the same process. That's why I was like, this is the bare minimum for a performance coach to do. This should be the bare minimum process for a performance coach or a personal trainer. What do you want to do? What are the demands of that thing? Where are you at right now? All right, what are the relevant things for me to bridge the gap on?
Yeah.
And then we go from there. So for me, that's what like the sport specificity comes from. And I'm kind of with you. Like if that's how you market it, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? Like if that's what the general public understands, then fine. Like I think we got to probably stop getting so mad at each other about how we market certain things. Like I don't think it's
Right.
inherently disingenuous.
Right.
Like I think I'm okay. I think that probably doesn't matter as long as your clients or potential clients understand what it is that you do, the value that you bring.
Mm-hmm. No, those are all good points. I think where it would matter is if they come to us and they dictate what, and they, as in the population we want to work with, they dictate what our training is. So, for example, if
sure.
I'm an independent trainer, I don't have a team, and somebody comes up to me and say, "Hey, I want to get better at golf," and I'm a young coach. I'm like, "All right, but this is probably how golf swing is. So I'm gonna improve the skill of doing a golf swing by putting, like you said earlier, a weight on the swing or a cable around the ball, or sorry, the golf club, right?"
Mm.
And then I think if we don't have that lens prior to helping the people with their sport specific training, they almost mold our training. Because I'm speaking from experience of like I was molded of my thought of training based off of the people who kept asking me that they want to train for basketball, for soccer, for volleyball, and then I wouldn't have a lens to think through in order to train. So, for example, if early on I want, they like I gave the example of the golf club. If they want to get better at that sport, I would only think of the lens of that sport and not the lens of a coach. Right? I didn't understand position patterns or the performance of that individual and how I could help somebody getting better at volleyball versus somebody putting their suitcases up. Like I didn't have that. Their suitcases up on in the plane. I didn't have that pattern recognition of like, oh, this human actually just needs to put that shoulder up. Do they have the ability to do that?
Yeah.
What is the requirements for shoulder flexion? It's very similar from playing volleyball to someone on a plane that just wants to put their suitcase up, right? So I think pattern recognition is something that I've had to learn as a coach, and not getting too focused on like the actual sport or demand of life and thinking those are two separate things.
I love that. I love it. Yeah. No, that's dead on, right? We're just humans who move.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're all humans. We all move. So some people need to do it faster. Some people need to do it for longer. Some people need to do it through bigger ranges of motion. Some people need to do it for smaller ranges of motion, right? Like some people need to do it to get bigger. Some people need to do it to get smaller. Like it's all just we're just moving. Humans who move, right? It's like that's. But you're right. Like that's a hard lens to cultivate. I'm trying to remember back to like when I first learned, when we first going through university, first going through CSCS, things like that. I think it is kind of like broken down into like this is training for football and this is training for volleyball, and like there are aspects that are going to be wildly different, but it's because of the demands of the sport. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not. It's just the same as it would be if like a person has a weight loss goal or a person has like a strength gaining goal. The programs are going to look different because the goals are different, right?
Yeah.
Like the demands of what they want are different. So I think we get, like you said, like, so hyper fixated on like, all right, volleyball is its own specific thing and it's distinctly different from everything else. And then like surfing is its own thing and it's distinctly different from everything else. And not seeing those like that thread of movement through literally every sport and every activity.
Yeah.
And it is a hard thing to start to kind of realize.
And what helped me when you say that early on, I would look at like a lot of tape, right? A lot of YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
so for example, dribbling a basketball, I would want to see how they dribble, how a versus how a proficient dribbler is, right? And what are like the the different aspects of how one moves, and why aren't they getting in positions where they'd like to, right? So I think it'd be helpful to have a distinction of the skill of the sport to see as a coach. And now, like biomechanically, this person moves this way, and they want to get better at that sport, and I want to see how a more proficient mover moves.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at me, can't really dribble, and I watch like a Kyrie Irving video, and he dribbles very well. If my hips are just not able to move in a certain position, now I can see the patterns of like, oh, it's just the hips. Maybe there's something there that I can really focus on, and not so much of like, all right, the dribbling pattern. I got to put a ball or a heavier ball in their hand, and like, so I think it's just a matter of like what you said, the physical aspects of it. Can we just now dissect it to every degree, as much as we can, and actually differentiating the skill of the movement too. I think there's a lot of skill that we don't really need to touch on as a coach.
Yeah.
And it's probably not even going to help them as much. And I can't think of one right now. Maybe serving tennis ball. Maybe that might be a good one. Of like, serving a tennis ball is a skill. Like, can they be accurate of the ball? Because and if they can't, you just have to serve more, right?
Yeah.
But if their shoulder mobility is limiting them there, because they can't really get to a certain position at the top of that serve, that's where we can lock in on. But I think we get really hyperfixated. Like, I want to get you better at serving a tennis ball, and we're gonna work on that. But it's you work on that. Like you go do 1,000 serves and lock that in, right? Like that's a skill of the sport, not so much something for me I need to really hone in on. Communication is important there, but there's that tactical aspect, right? Like, we don't touch that.
Yeah, right. It's how can I improve the physical so that it can be utilized in the technical and tactical, right? Those are two. That's dribbling basketball and the position you can get into, serving a tennis ball, like all that stuff is great examples of how can we improve the physical, whether it's in those instances like a position you can get into, great. Now I've opened up some movement options for you for the technical and tactical, whether it's like a strength piece, right? Like back to tennis, having trouble changing directions on the court, especially on hard court, like that's going to be a high eccentric peak force to have to plant, change direction, and get to a ball. It's like, all right, well, like you can make the positions, you're just slow. Well, all right, let's raise the physical bucket, right? Let's make you stronger eccentrically. Let's do some, throw in some multi-directional movement skill where we're training that ability, right? And improving it over time. And then hopefully when we're, putting you back into the technical bucket or all along when you're still playing your sport, you start to feel the physical changes kind of manifest in the technical and tactical environment, right? In the sporting environment. Again, like that's what the sport specific piece is. But I think
Yeah.
like the thing you called out as far as like, I'm not gonna teach you how to serve, right? Or I'm not gonna give you cues on your serve. I think the pendulum kind of started there, maybe, right? When the sport specificity craze was kind of hot. And then now I feel like it's swung all the way back to like just stick to the basics, like just get stronger and faster, and then that's it. Like you'll be fine. And I feel like it's starting to swing back a little bit towards like maybe we can do some specific technique stuff. I don't know. maybe I can get on the pitch with the guys a little bit. I don't know. Like do you feel that swing starting to happen a little bit?
A little bit, just because the social media has gotten a lot better in that regard. I think the swing is based off of like the marketing of trainers online, of like how can my video look very specific to the population or that I want to train, and the population now sees it and they lock in with me, right? So I think, and that's just my opinion of how it's swinging back. Of let's put a video of this quarterback throwing this football, and then now I'm actually transitioning into this same quarterback, throwing a cable forward, and it's not wrong, but I think a lot of it is based off of like how, all right, population, lock in with me because you're gonna get better at this sport based off of what we do in the movement. So it's that marketing, right? It works. It helps. I think we just as coaches need to understand that too. Like, we we should have these lenses, of how people come in, just from a movement standpoint, and then how we say things, how we translate things to the people for them to understand. That's really the key, right? Of how we can specify the sport specific training. And I don't know if we touched on that, right? But we could actually make people worse too if we go that route of we don't understand, but we're gonna make this look like the sport. And I've done that, both accidentally and actually intentfully too. I wanted to hear your thoughts of like, what do you think of times of the season where it's okay to actually make them slow down before they can speed up? So for example, like serving a tennis ball again, if their shoulder mobility was lacking, like it's 100, they could only go this far, right? Like whatever degrees that is, 140, whatever, and they're serving well, right? They're serving pretty good, not the best, but they're not aces, right? In certain parts of the season, we improve their shoulder mobility, but now they have to go back into their court and they're adjusting based off of their new body mechanics. If we improve it to 160, right? How can we view that as coaches of, okay, if we're improving body mechanics or just general positions, patterns of this individual, can we, or is that something we should be doing if they're already proficient at it to get them better? Or, and how's what are your thoughts there?
That's good. That's a good question. That's a really good question. And that's a conversation that you hear a ton about, or a ton from coaches working like consistently in, NBA, MLB, things like that. And I think it's like, like anything in training, it's just a cost benefit analysis. Like, all right, how much is this going to cost time wise, physically? And then, like you're saying, like time to then almost maybe relearn a pattern. And then what's the potential benefit? Like how high is that potential benefit? And I think for some athletes, like especially the higher you go up in level, like they might be that way for a reason. Like they might have organized into only being able to make 140 degrees of shoulder flexion for a reason. Like, and if that's their thing, if that's their superpower on their court or in their game, then we might just, let it be, right? Leave it alone. But I think like, especially in an instance like that, where it's like, if it's like a super drastic, either weakness or discrepancy in range of motion towards, you know, the quote unquote norms of the same population. And like if the serve is like not their best thing, and I'm like, listen, like we're gonna take an L on this for a little bit, but in the future, like it's going to be better. In the very least, it's not gonna be worse. So it's like we can, you know, take time to learn. But that's again a conversation with like you, the athlete, their coach, like all trying to unpack that stuff. And I think tennis is actually a good example of that, because you'll see, you know, people try to retool their serve and their strategies throughout their career. Like Djokovic is, you know, just went through some pretty drastic changes to his serve that, like, you know, initially didn't make a huge impact, but now he's consistently serving harder than he ever has, and he's like 37. So it's like, again, like they ran a cross benefit analysis, and it made sense at that point in time. But if you're height of your game, maybe it doesn't make sense. Like he's starting to get towards the end of his career. I say that, and he'll probably win the U.S. Open, probably win the Olympics. But you know, there's some younger guys coming up. The game's getting harder hitting. Everyone's serving fast as hell. So it's like, well, this is now weak relative to the field. So something that was good enough is now relatively weak to the field. So now it's time to make that change,
Right.
and like take the risk to make that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sport, higher level athletes, the higher you go, the better compensator typically are, right?
Yeah.
Of to produce that skill that has gotten you to that point. So I think, who said this to me? Coach said this to me, like Usain Bolt, like he has flat feet or something, right? And if a person who's really locked in with gait mechanics, and they just get somebody like Usain Bolt, or maybe Usain Bolt himself, and they see him flat footed, they would think of that as a problem. Now I'm gonna fix his flat foot, where it's like maybe he's running fast in spite of that, and you might actually mess up a lot of the way he's producing the power, because he's compensated based off of what his body is allowing to do or not allowing him to do.
Yeah.
And I think longevity is important there, where you mentioned, like, where are they in the career? Where are they in life?
Yeah.
I think most humans would like to say they don't want to feel pain, right? They want to do whatever they're doing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Can they do that feeling good, right? And I think it's, I don't know, I've been playing around with the idea of like when and how now of the compensations that we see. Does it make sense? And you know, what do they want to do? You know, if they're serving well and their shoulders feeling like crap, I'm like, okay, do you want to keep serving well, or do you want to not feel like crap and serve not as well for a short period of time, but have a longevity in your career? So it's a question. It's our thoughts, right, of how we can start to think of this human being as a whole, and where they are, and where they want to be.
Yeah, and I think that's again goes back to being a good, like the standard of just being a performance coach. Like that is the standard that you have to take in the full context. And I think like sport specific training, quote unquote, you know, the way it's potentially been done in the past, or, you know, the bad variations that come to mind, like potentially don't take in the full context. And I know it's straw manning that a little bit, but like, are you blindly being like, all right, you know, to be a good running back, you need X, Y, and Z? Or are you being like you said, taking in the full context of like, all right, here's the athlete I'm working with, and here's their position, here's how they play their position, their individual strengths and weaknesses. And it's like you said, we're shaped by our environment, we're shaped by the things that we do. So it's, you know, maybe they've just kind of molded themselves to this way based on what they're good at and how they play their game. So it's like, I don't need to, you know, fix, quote unquote, the thing that's wrong with them, because it's what makes them great or helps them be great. Or maybe I do, because it's not really contributing to, you know, them playing at a high level, and it might be taking away from their ability to play at a high level for a long period of time.
Right. And when you say that, it's funny how on the other side of that spectrum is when we work with general population, you know, we could even call it parent specific training, right? Because we often communicate that, like, oh, this is how when you pick up your grandkids, or you're going to be playing for a long period of time. We get that for buy-in, and then we're not as specific, but it's like we're communicating it in this manner so that you buy in. But then we really put the line in the sand for some reason of like those are two different things. Where it's the same thing. It's the
same process.
Human body, right? Position, pattern of how you do it, and I think just communicating it is like the red thread as a coach of how it translates.
Yeah, God, I love it. Yeah, we're humans who move, and we have to explain things in a way that our client understands and they care about. Like, it's funny. Like, I've had clients who, I mean, my bias is like, doing quote unquote athletic things with everybody. Like, everyone's throwing and jumping, no matter who you are, just to varying degrees throughout the year. But like, we have clients who be like, this is stupid. I don't want to be an athlete. Like, why am I jumping? And then be like, something like an example, like you said, like, this is how you get better at throwing and playing catch with your kid. Or this is how you're throwing your kid up in the air in the pool, like whatever. And like, all right, yeah. Okay, I see it. It's like the same shit. It's just the same thing.
Yeah.
But whatever. Like, you understand it. That's literally all that matters. Maybe I can help educate you over time, but like, maybe that's not the path of education we go down.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
So say I'm a young coach. All right, I'm listening to this episode. Okay, now what, Phil? Well, JT, when I get this said individual who wants to, it could be a weekend warrior of playing tennis, or high level athlete playing football, or parent just trying to see their grandkids and play with them. What are some things I can do now before I have that person, or even while I have this person, to almost take a step back and understand the lens of a better way to approach this?
Yeah. I think it starts with having a process for this whole thing, right? A system for getting your first program iteration out there, right? And I think it starts with defining the needs. So the needs of the person, the needs of the sport, the needs of their specific position within their sport, how they play their position, their goals, their wants, right? Trying to unpack this person and what they do in front of us. Like, all right, what do they like to do? What do they do regularly? What do they get paid to do? Right. And that kind of helps dictate everything that we're putting. All right, here's the qualities they need. Here's the qualities that they want. Here are the things that, make them money. Is it their brain? Is it their body? Right. Like, what does this person have to do? And know that all that's going to come through like the lens of your personal philosophy and your past experience. Like, that's going to dictate a lot of this stuff. Like, JT and I can look at the same athlete and I might be like, cool, we're going to ramp up performance. Like, we're going to get you strong as fast as possible. And JT might be like, all right, cool, I'm going to make you as resilient as possible while getting you stronger and faster. Like we all inherently are going to value different things, and that's okay. But I think like trying to understand where that bias comes from, where that bias is important. And then from there, things like defining the timeline, how defining the frequency of training sessions, defining some potential barriers, all that stuff. Like, how often can we train? What might get in the way of training? Set your targets. So again, we've kind of decided, all right, these are the qualities they want and need. Let's assess them in some way. Let's see, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then from there, it's just let's do something. Let's get out a program that's good enough, and we can see how they respond. We can see if they like it. We can see if they don't like it. And I'm not going to stress too much over the creating the most perfect program when I start. I'm going to get something out there, again, see how they respond, and then we'll just keep making iterations of the program over time. But that's a process that works really well for me. Other people's process might look slightly different, but I think at the end of the day, it starts with understanding the person in front of you and what they want and need. And that's like, again, it's no different. It's the same exact process. That you would work with a pro athlete, a youth athlete, weekend warrior, the first, like a person working out for the first time ever. Same process that just leads to a different outcome.
Bars. Well said. I think question for me to always think about is like, where am I on that spectrum that you mentioned early on? Am I putting a ball in this athlete's hand just for everything that we're doing in the weight room? Or am I feeling I'm saying, nah, don't throw that ball in trash. We're doing weight room stuff because that's going to make you worse, right? And I think none of them are really going to, or neither of them are really going to optimize the training. It's when and how, right? Can you meet buy-in? Buy-in is key there, right? And I know it's often said, but it's an art in itself. Also, while getting the adaptations we would want in the weight room is the key, right? And it might be putting a ball in their hands to do the movement you're going to do in the warm-up already.
Yeah. And that, I think that some of that falls in your philosophy and what you value, right? Like, I know some coaches who get buy-in just from being who they are. Like, they've done it for a long time. They have a great track record. They could be doing the dumbest thing you've ever seen, but athletes are like, you're the guy. I know you're the guy because you've done it, right? Yeah. Some coaches get buy-in, like you said, by biasing what people want first. So giving them the ball, maybe doing a ton of like direct arm work and hypertrophy, whatever they expect, kind of giving it to that. Some people get buy-in by building a good rapport, building strong relationships. Again, this is like, I know everyone's probably doing some variation of all three, but the thing you do more of is probably just, again, based on your philosophy and the things that you value as a coach, the things that you think are important as a coach.
I think buy-in in the exercise is also something we can start to think about. Like Mike G, something I see with him a lot. Like he's naturally he's a football player. He plays football, right? But he trains NBA basketball players. Like they know he's not a hoop. He doesn't hoop. He tries to, but it's not like he tries to market himself as a hooper, right? And he's okay with that. That's something who he is, and they buy in with him already. But when there's basketball in their hands, now they buy into that specific exercise. There's a little bit more intent with the movement, where I think now we can think about it in that way of, is there a movement? Like they don't really translate in their head at that moment, even though they love you, they'll invite you to the birthday party, whatever it is. But sometimes those are the moments we might have to have buy-ins for themselves as a person, as an athlete, to lock in with intent, or it's something we can play with, right?
So I love that, right? Like, do plyometrics for volleyball players at the net, basketball players at the rim, like even if you as a coach are like, this is dumb, like we don't, this is not sport specific. What outputs? That's what matters.
Yeah.
Drive and adaptation. That's what matters. Doesn't matter how you do it, as long as it's ethical.
Yeah. Yep. Man, it's fun. I can go on another 2 hours if you want with this, bro. But I think nobody wants to hear that right now, other than me.
This is it's got to be one of the first times where you shut down a pod. And I'm
proud
of you.
I'm trying my best.
Oh my goodness! I know it's a good combo. This is a good combo. I know I feel like we've taken a couple of weeks off, even though the show keeps going. Movie magic.
Trying.
Just knocking the rust off. Felt good. But where can people find you, JT?
CoachJT.mp3. Lock in.
With
IG. Sorry, Instagram.
IG. Quick side note on Threads. I feel like Threads for me, every time I accidentally click in there, it's just lawless. It's just the weirdest and worst takes I've ever seen. So I don't know if that's my algorithm.
What? Now you got to share. What do you see?
That's off.
What are you talking about?
It's off. It's all like social.
What are you talking about?
Stuff,
what do you mean?
Which is like really weird. Like you click into Threads, it's just like a weird clickbaity thing.
Yeah, I think that's how Twitter was early on too, though.
Is it?
Yeah. That's how it goes. But we'll get it back.
Early Twitter. I was just text a tweet in math class. You text a tweet in all math class. Probably why I failed math.
You get the pound sign now playing with Wiz Khalifa, whatever it was.
Just saying the most unhinged thing at like 15, text a tweet in school.
Early Twitter was insane, man. If y'all missed that,
it's awesome.
It was great. Hey, one thing, never mind. I'll save it for another episode. I was talking about when you mentioned algorithms and whatnot. I think it's worth talking about because everybody's like you say it all the time, like, oh, my algorithm's different and everybody's algorithm's different. Well, I think there's value to like you can actually make your own algorithm now, right? So click on our videos, like push your P a little bit more often. We'll show up more often. I promise you will like, get better.
Make sure you consume at least 3 to 4 push and P reels a day. If you want to bump it up to 10 to really repost, share it to other people. That way, it really tailors your algorithm to like high quality information, laughs, good vibrations, the things that you want to see in a social media algorithm.
Yeah, talk about vibrations, espresso, you know, volleyball training, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, just like, share, subscribe. Just continuously keep doing that. Like create another account that then you do the same thing on, and that helps your other account. Like just trust us. This is what you want to do.
Please.
But damn, all right. You can find me on IG at Nashville. You can find the show on IG, YouTube, and Threads at Pushin Performance. No G. As always, do the things that we just suggested for your algorithm and for your mind, body, and soul. If you like the show, give us a 5-star rating. Share it with a friend. Throw some stuff in the comments. I don't even know anymore. I feel like I've said all the things that you could potentially do on social media. Just do it. Until next time, catch you later.
Peace.